Hello everyone, this is Faye here from Twilight Crafts, and this is a short demo video just showing how you can create a mixed media background using the Vicky Boot and Where To Next kit. I'm going to be using the Jennywren stencil that comes in the kit, which is this little footprint stencil, and we're going to be creating a background that will be used for the Where To Next layout, and I'm going to be using this cut file. So this layout will be created in the live craft along, and we'll also show you the link to that video so you can watch back, and we're going to be making this inky background. So just a few things that you'll need to make this background. We've got 4 colours of Distress Oxides. So we've got Mermaid, Lagoon, Mustard Seed, Worn Lipstick and Mowed Lawn. You can use any colour combination. I just picked ink colours that I thought coordinated with the papers quite well. And I've got some ink brushes. I like to use these little blending brushes. And I've got little caps for those. I've also used these lovely little mini brushes that we've got in the shop, really nice and soft and perfect for making inky backgrounds. So the other things that you'll need is some water. So I've just got a mug of water and a fan paintbrush because we're going to make some drips and splats as we go, and some trusty kitchen roll to create the bleaching technique where we will lift some of the ink off. So the first thing you want to do is create 4 lines of ink in the 4 colours. So I'm going to move those just off the screen here in that order. Set aside the fan paintbrush because we don't need that just yet. And we're going to take each of the colours and create a strip of colour. And what I like to do so that your brush isn't too inky is just dab the ink when my camera comes back into focus. The camera doesn't seem to like just plain white paper and tries to focus. So we're going to go for a strip of yellow. So just a really light dusting. So you can either use these little brushes to lay down some colour, or you can use the larger blending brushes. I'll show you with both because either brush works well. But I just tap off the excess so that you don't get any big, bold, inky marks. I'm going to lift some of this ink off with a kind of bleaching technique at the end. So you've got a strip of yellow. You can make that as dark as you like. You can keep adding a bit more ink to build it up. And you want to make sure that that's all. So you've got about an inch of white at the top and bottom. Circular motions, or with this soft brush kind of up and down. Come on, camera. The camera's deciding to zoom in and out. Apologies. It's taking a little while to focus. There we go. That's it. So we've got Mermaid, Lagoon next. And this one, slightly more chalky than the others, but I love the Distress Oxides. So I might use this little soft brush to lay down the colour first of all. I kind of found little circular motions give a nice background, and the trick is not to press too hard, otherwise you're going to get some of those brush strokes. But because we're doing a bleaching technique on this one, we're going to be lifting some of the ink back off, and we're going to put lots of drips and splats. So if you get a few brush marks, it doesn't really matter too much. Kind of the joy of creating the background, really. that's a nice bit. So I decided on the order of yellow, blue, pink and green. But obviously you can change that up. Use the inks that you have. I'm using Distress Oxides. Distress inks would work equally well. So that's the Mermaid Lagoon, Mustard Seed. Let's go pink next. So this is Worn Lipstick. And get some of that colour down. And then we can start playing with lifting some of it off and adding a few more splats. So hopefully you might have a go with this similar technique. You could equally do the lines horizontal instead of vertical. It's entirely up to you. I thought the vertical lines worked quite well with the cut file title laid across the bottom. So that's my plan for the background. So we've got Mowed Lawn next. This is a lovely green that coordinates beautifully with the Where to Next paper collection. Debbie's made some lovely colour swatches of her inks, so it means that she can colour match perfectly to paper collections she's working with, because often you find the ink colour can be a bit misleading on the ink pad. It's only when you apply it to the paper that you can really see the colour, and that colour can vary depending on the background of paper that you're inking onto. So we have our background there. Let's move the brushes out the way because we're going to have a go with some of the bleaching techniques. So if I bring this back into camera, so you can see here there are some light pieces where we've lifted the ink off, and you're making all of these kind of mottled watermarks. So for that technique, get some water, get your fan brush, and we're just going to start to drip onto the ink. And the more water you put on, the more will lift off. So you kind of let that mellow for a bit. And then I don't want to mix the colours, so I'm going to make sure my tissue is not cross-contaminating, because as you can see it lifts quite a lot of the ink off. So I'm going to make sure I don't dab yellow onto the blue because I don't want to create green. But you're just lifting off to create this bleaching technique, and it lifts really well on the pink, and then lifting off some of that lovely green. The other thing that is useful to have if you are a bit tight for time is a heat gun. So I've got my heat gun here. It's very old. It's a trusty heat gun. I'm just going to plug it in, and if we need to dry off the paper, then we can give it a quick blast with the heat gun. Because the key is we don't want the ink to mix. We don't want to make mud, as Vicky Booton herself would say. We don't want to make mud. So sometimes drying in between layers is a really good idea. And then we're going to add a few more bits of colour with the fan brush. Now, if you've got a bit of messy mat or a scrap of paper, then you can ink straight onto it. I actually like this. I've got this is just some palette paper, and they're tear off disposable palettes, and it means that you can place some ink down. So I'll show you here. Take the ink pad, rub it onto the palette, and then we can start to create some really nice water droplets. Now it's quite heavy pigmented, and I want to just add a few. Now the trick here again, so we don't make mud, I got some kitchen roll and I just laid it straight over the other colours just to keep it covered, and then you can start to add some of those extra drips, because that adds an extra vibrant edge. You can, I also kind of moved some of the ink around with my brush just to add a few more bits of vibrant colour, being careful not to blend into the blue. So that's the yellow, and that is going to need a bit of a dry. I'll give it a proper dry at the end. And as I'm laying my kitchen towel back over that, it's going to cover it nicely and make sure we don't get any colours mixed. So I'm going to do blue next. So I am going to cover it either side so that I don't get splats of blue over the other areas. And get the palette, wipe off the yellow so we don't mix the colours. And we're going to go with a bit of blue. So same technique, rub onto the palette or rub onto an old plate or rub onto a piece of plastic. Anything will do. And the fan brush enables you to have lots of tiny little drips, because the fan brush kind of holds all the little bits of ink. And we're going to create a few more drips and splats. Larger paintbrushes just create bigger drips, so that's fine. If you've got a larger paintbrush and you haven't got a fan paintbrush, that's equally a great technique. So that's the blue, a few little splats, and then we're just going to just move it straight across, give that a little blast with the heat gun, and it will properly dry out as we're working. Set some of that, and then let's move over to the pink. So worn lipstick this time, so we can clean off the palette. And let's go with some worn lipstick. I love this colour. And I don't tend to get clean water every time. It seems to be fine to just use the same. You can see my mug is looking rather green at the moment, but it doesn't seem to interfere with the pigments in the ink. Keeping that bit of green covered. I think that's enough. That's pink. Give that a little blast, and then we'll go on to the green. And I kind of like anything that smudges. I'm not, it's definitely okay to have smudges and things. That's all part of the technique, I think. You can move it around a little bit, so get your paintbrush, lift a little bit off here. Just adds a bit more texture to it. I'll hold it up to the camera in a moment. And then finally the green. So mowed lawn, lay down the ink, plenty of water to get those drips. Definitely worth making sure you've got a surface that you don't mind getting dirty, because there are little drops of ink that kind of fly all over the place. So that's the palette's done its job. I'm going to get the paintbrush and kind of again move some of the ink around. And there we go. So that is our background created. So I'll hold that up to the camera, just give it a little dry. And then we will be ready to do our stenciling. Now you may let this dry for a little bit longer. You have a little bit more time than I have got. You let that really dry off because you don't want the stenciling to smudge everything. So that is really nice and dry now. Okay. A couple of little bits that aren't quite dry, but we should be fine. So you take your Jennywren stencil, and then thinking about where your title is going to go on this layout. So I'm going to create a layout with the title along the bottom. So I want the two footprints to be on the upper part. So on this one, I alternated the footprints, starting with the left foot or the right foot, and just did two of each colour. So starting with mustard seed, and these brushes are great for stenciling, and it's obviously a nice deep colour, so I didn't lift off a lot of the ink. I just went straight in with the stencil. So there's our first one, and it kind of is tone on tone. It's all blending in, and our newsletter will have photographs of this so that you can see up close how the footprints look. So that's the mustard seed, and cleaning off our stencil in between. I generally use a baby wipe and it cleans off quite quickly. So back to my disposable palette, just wiping that off and making sure we don't get mud on the layout. And if you're near a sink, you can give it a quick wash and dry, and then you know that all the ink is off. Or if like me, just dry it on your trousers, which is probably not the best idea. So then I alternated, and I went with the right foot on this one onto the blue. Made sure you've got a nice dark footprint, and then another one up here. I just love this stencil. I think the options are endless for mixed media backgrounds with this one. So you've got your two blue footprints, and a quick clean off. That's it. And then onto the pink. So worn lipstick. So we're going to start with the left foot on this one. I'm alternating plenty of ink because you want these stencils to be quite dark. So, and because they're oxides, they don't bleed. That is the thing I love about the oxides. They give a really full cover. And these brushes are great for not bleeding through the stencil. So that's the pink. Give this another quick clean on my disposable palette. And then finally, Mowed Lawn. So I was on the left foot on that one, so I'm going to use the right foot on this one. This is a Distress Oxide I've only recently purchased, and I love it. The colour is fab. So there is our finished background. So fairly quick and easy. Background made in just under 20 minutes. and I hope you enjoy making this one. So thanks for joining, everyone, and don't forget to post any layouts you make onto our Twilight Crop and Craft Facebook group. We do a prize draw every month for anybody who has uploaded projects to our page. Thanks, everyone.